everyone, welcome to Chinese Pod. My name's Fiona and you're joining us for our brand new series where we interview Chinese learners and talk a little bit about how they learn Chinese. Hopefully you'll be able to learn some good tips and tricks to help you improve your Chinese learning. So today we have Cole, my good friend Cole, with us, joining us on this show, and he's going to talk a little bit about how he studies Chinese. One thing of note, I'll be asking the questions in English and Cole will be responding in Chinese. Not to worry, we're going to have subtitles for all of this, but feel free to expand on points in whichever language that you want. 好 So let's first have a self-introduction. 我们先来一个简短的自我介绍。
好吧，我叫韦思明，那我是从密歇根州来的，我住在大吉柳城，然后可是我在犹他长大，现在我是大三的耶鲁学生，我是学习中国文学。和那个文学理论。
Okay, so who better to get tips from than a Yale student studying Chinese literature? Okay, 好 First of all, what got you interested in learning Chinese in the first place?
那我高中的时候，我的高中学他们需要我们学生有至少一年的外语学习，所以他们有差不多4个选择，有西班牙语、法语，他们有阿拉伯语，然后他们有中文、汉语。我觉得其中一个哪一个是最有意思的，当然是汉语了。所以我选的汉语，可以说我学习中文的开始就是很偶然的，可是我很快就爱上了中文。
Okay, so you started learning Chinese in high school, kind of having to pick compulsory having to pick a second language. But what made you study it at university?
那我很快就爱上了中文，就是我觉得中文的有很好的那个艺术价值，而且我觉得声调非常有意思，而且对我在高中的时候我去北京留学一个学期，我觉得对，当然从那点开始，我觉得中文就是非常有意思，而且中国文化也是非常有意思，而且跟西方文化截然不同，所以我觉得这样的差异值得学习。然后对，那到耶鲁的时候，我上一门课就是《红楼梦》的这门课，就是翻译的《红楼梦》，可是对我也爱上了《红楼梦》，所以我觉得我应该继续学习中国文学和中文。
So it seems like the culture, the history, kind of the art is a big draw for you. And I'd love to pick your brain about that slightly later on in the interview. But for now, can we just have an idea of what your routine is like? How do you study, like day to day?
那我不太喜欢把我的学习时间集中，我不太喜欢集中的时间，不要开夜车，因为我觉得不利于那个长期的中文学习，我不如喜欢我很喜欢那个有随时学习，我很喜欢用那个有不同的原来我在脸书网站我会有很多那个新闻什么的随时学习中文，而且那个为了我们学校的课呢，我觉得最好的方法就是掌握不同的机会来跟学生聊天。我的运气很好，因为耶鲁有很大的那个中国学生的人口，所以我应该那个抓紧这个机会说话。因为我觉得说话是最重要的。
So it sounds like you're more about kind of finding time throughout your day, kind of finding little snippets of opportunities rather than sitting down for an hour and like practicing characters or studying a textbook, right? But apart from this more organic approach, is there a resource that you couldn't live without?
简单的说，那个皮鲁克那个 Pleco 当然了，对，因为我对中文的那个好奇心就是太强了，所以我觉得那个 twerk 用中文怎么说？Pleco 一下，但是颠臀舞就是什么很有意思，对，所以
我也没有想过，
对，所以这是我过了一天，我觉得Pleco 非常有用。
So it seems like Pleco really suits your kind of more organic learning style, where you're able to kind of dip in. It's a great dictionary that we talk about often on Chinese Pod. Everything. It seems like the catchphrase for all Chinese learners is, "I'm gonna Pleco it." Probably to the displeasure of Chinese teachers, because Guillem's always like, in Pleco it says that it's actually this, and I'm like, Yeah, but it is a great resource.
对，可是你需要小心，我觉得不用依靠 Pleco，而且你用 Pleco 的时候，你不用那个随便的用，那我觉得用 Pleco 练习是最好的。我会常常会 用 Pleco 的时候会用我的那个手指来练习那个笔顺什么的，我觉得也是很重要的。
I guess maybe to draw on one point you mentioned, maybe for all Chinese learners, it's not to you shouldn't overly rely on a dictionary or a translation method. It should be a tool that supports your learning and your understanding of the Chinese language. But you should always try and see if you can find a way to find that language in context. 好，那接下来我想问你 I would like to ask you next, are there any time-saving hacks, or maybe the word hack doesn't seem to be kind of part of your method, but is there something that you find really saves you time when you learn Chinese?
那看课本的时候，或者不同的那个上课的练习，我觉得最重要的是用中文思考。因为我看书的时候，我就是有很多词汇，然后我就觉得我与其说what does this word mean 什么的什么，我就说这个字有什么意思什么的什么的什么的，所以你不是用英文来教中文，你是用中文来教中文，学习中文，所以我觉得是最好的方法。
Model students, ladies and gentlemen. At Chinese Pod, we're always talking about kind of cultivating that Chinese frame of mind, right? And I love how you use that as an example of a time-saving method by thinking in Chinese, by using Chinese to actually learn Chinese, rather than relying too much on your mother tongue. It's actually a great way to save time in learning. 好，那下一个问题 next question. What would you say you're best at, and what would you say that's something that you're still working on in terms of learning Chinese?
那我学习中文的时候，我就强调说话的能力，所以我觉得我很早就那个培养一个说话的自信心，我觉得是很重要的。可是那个可能可以说我写汉字的能力有点差，可是我觉得那个中文的基础当然是你的语言跟你的耳朵的关系，而且我觉得我这个关系对我来说我觉得不错，我觉得这是中文的基础，所以我觉得在这一方面是我优点，就是对汉字对一直很难，就是能记下来怎么写是很难，可是我们有机会打字，我觉得是很好的，所以我不太紧张，我这是一个缺点。
You just mentioned that it's making that connection between the word, the sound, and really making that relationship with your ears and your listening. And I think for you guys watching this, it's about finding that one method that really works for you. I've also met Chinese learners that focus exclusively on Chinese characters. They could only write for the first year of their Mandarin learning experience. And it sounds like you're working at it from a kind of a speaking perspective. That's great, but it's just about finding your method.
对，而且我在大学的时候，我们上课的时间都是强调写汉字、写文章。可是对，所以我应该自学一下。而且你应该跟你的同学找到机会讨论。因为如果你就是在你的卧室里学习怎么写文章，你觉得这是不好基础。
So for you were in your classes, you were focused mostly on reading and writing. So for you, it's so important to find those opportunities to talk. So maybe it's about finding what you're lacking currently in your Chinese study routine. All right, I want to ask, when was the first time that you felt that, wow, I'm getting quite good at this, and how can maybe someone else start to move towards that moment of, maybe I can actually learn this language, maybe I can actually speak Chinese? 你还记得吗？ Do you still remember?
对，在这一方面我觉得留学是很重要的，因为你跟那个当地汉人跟那个中文是他们的母语，所以他们对外国人的态度很好。他们觉得对，他们觉得你学习中文非常棒，而且如果你的口音不错，他们都吃惊了。所以我觉得这样 是一个就鼓励我继续学习中文。而且你在美国学习中文的时候，你可能不会有这样的机会，有人反映你的中文说话能力，
给你一个回馈 right to give you some nice feedback.
是的
I feel like learning Chinese it's one of those languages where you get such good feedback and such encouragement from native speakers, right? I feel like probably not the case for someone that's studying English, but maybe it's about, that sounds like a really good motivation, right? If you have the opportunity to travel abroad to somewhere that they speak Chinese, getting that kind of feedback really gives you that, wow, like, I can do this. Okay, this kind of ties in with some of the first things that you were mentioning, but do you still learn for pleasure? Because I know many people that find it a chore or something that they have to do, whether you're studying it. Maybe the better question would be, how do you keep studying Chinese a real pleasure for you?
那我觉得，因为我要强调培养我的好奇，我觉得这样一来，我觉得我应该看一些对我有兴趣、我有兴趣的东西。如果我在学习生意什么的，生意中文什么的，我觉得有点无聊吧。可是因为我的专业就是文学，所以我抓紧所有的机会来看文学。所以就是我觉得是很好的方法，而且如果你不喜欢学习中文，为什么继续学习中文呢？我觉得培养你对中文的兴趣，我觉得是很重要的。
How about maybe if someone, maybe they have to study business English, maybe they're doing it for work reasons. Do you have any tips for them to really find that pleasure? Is it really just about connecting learning Chinese with a hobby, perhaps?
我觉得你应该强调跟别人聊天。如果你要学习生意的中文，我觉得你也要用口语，用你说话，因为谈生意就是说话的，所以我觉得也应该强调说话的机会。可是有些学生没有这样的机会，很难的，对，所以你应该，而且网络是一个非常好的那个的东西，你可以找一些同学，而且有很多的地方能找到不同的中文学生，跟他们聊天，因为那个一个人学习中文，我觉得有点难过。
Yeah.
这一个人学习什么的外语都是。
I think, often people ask me, Fiona, should I get a one-on-one tutor and all this kind of stuff? I feel like if you have a very specific learning goal, like in 2 months' time you need to pass an exam, that's a great opportunity to get, a one-on-one tutor. But learning a language is about communicating with other people. So what better way than to have classmates? And if you are learning Chinese for your job and you're really finding it a chore, maybe it's about finding that small group of people that you really resonate with, whether it's like ultimate frisbee or I don't know, whatever, right? But finding that group of people that you can really connect with and learn a language together.
对，在这一方面，我觉得中文是很特别的，因为我们中文学生，我们面临着一样的挑战，就是很特别的挑战。我们的声调、那个汉字都很难，所以我们都在走这一样的路，所以我们有一种认同。
Yeah, you feel like there's like a certain sense of camaraderie with other people.
对，好像一个 club， 就是学习中文的 club， 所以
汉字很难，我也知道。
对。
If you were to give your past self some advice, what would that be? What about life? Learning Chinese.
对，我觉得简单的说就是慢一点，或者那个应该有耐心。因为常常学习外语，特别是中文，因为那个过程是很慢的。你不能很快就学习很多词汇，你就是很慢很难过的过程，所以我觉得耐心很重要。而且我第一年学习中文，我觉得我不能说话，我就是学习拼音什么的，我就是不知道怎么介绍我自己。然后那个第2年、第3年，我还不知道怎么表示我自己，我觉得很麻烦吧。可是应该到现在呢，我觉得值得。
I think obviously it depends on what your mother tongue is, but I think if you're a native English speaker, compared to picking up French or Spanish or something like that, you know, when you start learning Spanish or French as an English speaker, there's already so many words in common. So the initial 3 months or to a year can be, you know, really exciting because you feel like you're learning so much. I feel like with Chinese, it's slightly different, but if you keep your curiosity for the language and realize that there's no hack, there is no super method to learn Chinese. Rather, it's about finding a method that suits you and be patient with the language. You really will reap those rewards later on. It might not be as quick as another language, but it's definitely super rewarding when you get to that moment and they're like, wow, 你的中文说得真好啊. You'll be like, yes. Yeah, and I really appreciate that advice about taking things slowly. I feel like at the moment, especially the language learning industry, we're trying to like give you all these messages of like, you can learn this language in 6 months, you can learn this. But I personally disagree with that method, right? It's about laying solid foundations and taking your time to make sure you have a good relationship. Before we started this interview, you were talking about cultivating that relationship, that feeling. You don't want to look at Chinese and be like, oh, you want it to be a pleasure every time you open up the Pleco app and be like, oh, what's twerking in Chinese? You know, you want to keep that kind of innocence and that kind of feeling, that good feeling towards the language. Despite your level of Chinese now, are there any embarrassing moments that have made you either blush or sweat a bit?
那有很多，对，当然。可是对我去北京留学的时候，我的老师他学期的开始他刚结婚了，他非常开心什么的。可是他告诉我们，我就说啊，离婚怎么样？然后
离婚 instead of 结婚 ，divorce instead of get married。
对，婚礼就是我要说婚礼怎么样？你的婚礼很美丽吧？可是我说离婚怎么样？他说哦，我还没有，
还没有离婚。I haven't filed for divorce just yet. But I think that's part of the fun of learning a language. As Gwilym is saying off camera, he's saying learning Chinese is a lesson on humility, but it's okay, right? It's okay to make mistakes, and those funny anecdotes will actually carry you through, and you'll be able to share them with your fellow Chinese learning comrades. Okay, at this point, I wanted to thank you. 真的很谢谢你来分享你如何学习中文. Thank you so much for coming here to share how you study Chinese. We'd love to do more of these interviews, and if you'd like to know any specific questions, let us know in the comments below. Or if you're stopping by Taipei and you're a Chinese pod user, do drop by. 好，那我们再一次谢谢思明. Thank you guys for watching, and we hope you found that useful. We'll see you at the next interview. 再见。
再见。